A former Celtic legend has made a bold transfer claim that could change everything. Plus, controversial comments about the Ibrox chaos, a transfer target makes a shock decision, wage barriers blocking a potential deal, and a Celtic star has just made history on the international stage. It's been a massive 24 hours, but first make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel for more Celtic content. Former Celtic defender Charlie Mulgru has shared his view on the chances of the club signing a Lone Star permanently next season. The Mexican right-back has impressed supporters during his loan spell, bringing energy and aggression to the position when called upon. He arrived from Bournemouth looking for regular football. Minutes in the Premier League had been limited, and the move to Scotland offered a chance to play more often. Since joining, he has shown a willingness to get forward and defend with intensity. Those qualities have made him a popular figure among supporters. The discussion around a permanent move has grown as his performances have settled. Supporters have noticed his passion and how he approaches big matches. The defender's display at Ibrox was one moment that stood out, where his determination and work rate were clear throughout the game. However, the situation around the right-back position at Celtic is not straightforward. Alistair Johnston remains the club's first-choice player in that role. The Canadian international has been one of the most consistent performers in the squad over the last few years. Any move for another player in the same position would have to fit alongside that reality. Mulgru believes the financial side of the deal could also shape the decision. Transfer fees at that level are usually reserved for positions where clubs expect a higher resale value or a direct impact on goals. He said on the Go Radio football show, "I don't think they will sign a fullback for that amount of money. I don't think with Alistair Johnston being there, I don't think there is any chance of Celtic spending £10 million to have two top-class fullbacks in the building. That's my opinion. I think he has done brilliantly. He has been a breath of fresh air with his passion, commitment and intensity to the game. He showed that at Ibrox. But when there is that interest there, it is going to cost that money. Alistair Johnston is sitting there, who you could argue is a better fullback, potentially if Celtic sold Alistair Johnston, but I still don't think Celtic would invest £10 million in a fullback. I don't. There was a lot of money spent on Kieran Tierney's wages this year. Obviously, Kieran Tierney is a Celtic fan, grew up with the club, he has an affiliation with the club, comes back. If you are going to spend that amount of money, it's going to be on a forward player and a striker, somebody that can go for £25 million or more in the future. Mulgru's point comes down to how squads are built. Clubs rarely spend big money on a position where a clear first choice already exists. Now for the main story, as Celtic interim chairman Brian Wilson's comments following the chaotic scenes at Ibrox have drawn reaction from Simon Jordan. The debate follows the scenes at Ibrox after Celtic's penalty shootout win, when some Celtic supporters entered the pitch to celebrate before a group of Rangers supporters appeared to move towards them from the opposite end. Wilson had suggested that it should not be a race for clubs to issue immediate condemnations before the full circumstances are known. His comments came amid wider discussion about responsibility, security, and the handling of supporter behaviour after the final whistle. Jordan addressed the issue during a debate, broadly agreeing that rushing to release statements is not always the most useful response. At the same time, he argued that modern football clubs often feel pressure to comment quickly because of the way public scrutiny works. The former Crystal Palace owner also suggested that the main issue is not simply whether statements are released. Instead, he pointed to the need to understand how the situation developed and whether matchday arrangements were adequate. The events at Ibrox remain under review. Authorities are examining footage and reports to determine exactly what occurred and whether any disciplinary action is required. Jordan said on TalkSport, "The Celtic chairman, or whatever role he occupies, is right. It's not a race to see condemnatory statement out there, but in this day and age, it is a part and parcel of the optics of a media-facing business in football. To be upfront, to be across things, so you don't find yourself in the crosshairs of people's judgments. The police officer's description of the circumstances in whoever she was accounting to is almost a sideshow and distraction that the two clubs haven't condemned it, because it's really about what happened and how the systems failed and how the policing circumstances were allowed to be at a certain level, and was there enough police supporting it. I think ultimately, in this day and age, I don't think a statement solves anything, because you've got to deal with the reasons why it was allowed to happen. But from the optics of presenting a conversation to people like us so they can't be criticised, which is in part what the statement would be for, it wouldn't be anything other than that. Jim, with respect, it's meaningless, because if they're going to act behind the scenes and deal with it, what they're suggesting is, this is what happened and this is what we're now going to say about it, but that time has passed now. That could have been 2 or 3 days. We've done our research, and now we're going to take action against some of our fans who broke onto the pitch. In other news, Celtic supporters have quickly taken to a Lone Star since his arrival in January. The Mexican right-back has brought energy to the side and has not looked intimidated by the pace of the Scottish game. His performances have led to the usual question that follows a successful loan spell. Fans now want to know if the club can keep him. On the pitch, he has offered something slightly different on the right. He defends aggressively and does not shy away from contact. That style suits games in Scotland where wide players often face direct runners and plenty of physical battles. There is also the simple fact that he plays with visible emotion. Supporters notice that. A sliding tackle or a burst forward down the flank can lift a crowd quickly, especially during tight matches, yet turning a loan spell into a permanent transfer is rarely straightforward. The player remains a Bournemouth player, and his contract situation in England sits at the centre of the discussion. Journalist Michael Gannon recently explained the financial side of the situation when discussing the defender's future. Premier League wages often sit far beyond what Scottish clubs can realistically offer, even when the player involved is not a regular starter. He said on the Record Celtic podcast, "I'm led to believe it's somewhere north of £65,000 to £70,000 a week, which is beyond Celtic. For the player to stay at Celtic, he'd need to take a pay cut for a start. Celtic can afford to buy him, but they wouldn't pay £70,000 a week, that's for sure. You're in that kind of £60,000 a week plus ballpark, and that's the going rate for a backup right back in the Premier League. He's still got a couple of years left on his deal at Bournemouth, so financially it's a tricky one. That wage level explains why loan moves from the Premier League are often easier to arrange than permanent deals. English clubs can cover part of the salary while a player gains minutes elsewhere. Celtic are also expecting Alistair Johnston to return in the coming weeks after injury. The Canadian has not played recently but remains the club's first choice right back when fully fit. Any long-term move for the Lone Star would therefore have to sit alongside that reality in the squad. For the player himself, the decision would not be simple either. Walking away from a Premier League contract means giving up guaranteed income over several seasons. The situation therefore sits in a familiar place. Celtic may admire the player and supporters may want the deal done. The finances behind it are another matter entirely. Lastly, a Celtic star has reached a new milestone in Scottish football while also earning a return to the South Korea squad. The Celtic winger has now become the highest scoring South Korean in Scottish Premiership history. His latest brace took him to 12 league goals, moving him ahead of former Celtic striker Oh Hyun-gyu in the SPFL scoring list for South Korean players. It is a quiet record, but an impressive one considering the player arrived in Glasgow still developing his game. Those goals have not come from playing as a striker. The winger has done most of his work from wide areas. He often starts on the right but is comfortable drifting inside when Celtic attack around the box. That movement has become clearer this season. When the ball moves quickly across the final third, the player tends to arrive late at the back post or slip between defenders looking at the ball. Several of his goals have come from those moments. His form has now brought another reward. He has been recalled to the South Korea national squad for the upcoming friendlies against Ivory Coast and Austria. The call-up ends a long gap. He had not been selected since June last year. During that period, he continued playing regularly for Celtic and slowly added more goals to his game. That's all the latest Celtic news for today. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment below with your thoughts. I'll see you in the next one. Hail, hail.